How would you say your self-identification has changed over the years, or how do you just generally self-identify now?
Well, I actually can remember vividly being in my early, maybe late teens, early 20s, and wanting to say, well, I'm going to first, to a certain extent, I'm going to give up my Italian side of me, because it doesn't seem to fit in with the rest of the people that I'm interacting with, and it becomes too much of a chore to explain. So I'll just say that my parents were from Italy, and that I too am, my ancestry is Italian. I never can say that I gave it up to the extent where I would not say that I was, of course not. But I tried to walk that fence a little bit more on the American side until I probably matured a bit more, and then I realized that it was something that I should embrace rather than deny or to hide. And so it wasn't until I started getting, perhaps I would say maybe into my later 20s, that I thought, hey, wait a minute. I have something that is above and beyond what is average here, and I can use it to my benefit, rather than see it as something that kept me from being like the average, which meant that I was maybe abnormal, until I saw that it was, a positive. And you have to own that. And I don't know whether, I can't say that it was a circumstance or a situation per se that opened my eyes to that. It was, I guess, an accumulation of life events when I realized I've got something here that not only I could utilize to help others, but I too can benefit from it myself by promoting it more openly. And that's at that point in time when I decided I wanted to go into counseling, because I felt that counseling was the type of career where you can use your language skills and you could listen to other, whether they were people or students or clients, tell you a little bit about what they were experiencing, maybe some of the difficulties or the challenges, or what they may have felt were the discriminations, and how maybe my experience in my own very simple, limited way could be of assistance and support and shed some light for them to be able to recognize there are others that have experienced it, and it's okay that you feel this way.
So that definitely helps you in your counseling, and just from knowing you personally, I see that you have like an immediate connection with Latinas, Latinos, Chicanos, and most minorities, I would say. And that leads to my last question about self-identity. Do you find that your personal self-identification differs with the way others see you in modern society today?
Well, it's funny, I don't know this, somebody once told me this, but I don't consider myself an older woman in many cases. I consider myself sort of, I'm hip somewhat, but it's not until you look back and say, wait a minute, I can remember 40 years ago and 50 years ago, so this is not hip. This is someone who's got a little bit of time behind them. And so I think my image of myself now is somebody who is very much an advocate for students, or, the young people that I work with, and it just so happens that they're students, and that I can connect with so many of my students that are now, it's almost like interesting cycle, who are now first generation themselves coming into college. Not just first generation in this country perhaps, but coming into higher education. So I can relate to them on that level, but with the wisdom, I guess we can say, of 40 years, which allows you to look at the situation, I think, in a much more how do I want to say, not disparaging way, because I used to think, oh, this is going to be so tough. I don't understand the language. I don't know what college is. I remember, as I shared with you, going into one of my counselors, my first appointment, a career counselor or academic counselor in college, and asking, excuse me, but what is the difference between a unit and a credit? Those were words that I didn't understand that they were necessarily to a certain extent interchangeable. But, starting from really zero. So when I do have a student that comes in and tends to be naive or very green to the higher education, I take that as an opportunity to help them, to guide them, to encourage them, and to pat them on the back and say, it's going to be okay. Not going to be necessarily easy, but you'll get through this. You just have to feel comfortable in asking questions and listening to the answers. So that's where I see, I guess my identity is as somebody who is in a role that is unique to the fact that I have lived it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so have hundreds of others. I'm not saying that I'm, but unique in the way that I've been able to work with students for 30 plus years and seeing the evolution of the students' perspective of their own goals and their own aspirations. And I think it's really cool that now they can be allowed to openly say, this is what I want to do, help me get there.